That's what we're going to be discussing today.
We have become one of the most litigious societies on the planet.
The goal of this show is to bring clarity to the news coming out of Washington, D.C., and to expose the deception that has plagued our nation's capital for decades.
Exposing Washington.
Each Saturday at 2:30 p.m. Central.
On American Family Radio.
Why are Democrats so happy about this thing? I mean,
because it's good for them. Well, they got their priorities in there, and we didn't. This is a rather dark day.
In every situation over the past year, you have been carrying water for Donald Trump. This is not who you used to be.
The fact that it applies to Trump now, rather than applying to Bill Clinton, is why people like you have turned against me.
We're seeing all these people from the intelligence community, Brennan, Clapper, all of them piling on and exposing themselves to be left-wing Democrats who hate the president.
Bob Mueller should be allowed to finish his job. I think it was an excellent appointment.
It amazes me that white evangelicals, specifically white male evangelicals in the South, seem to not care.
If we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him.
Please stop pretending you're a rebel. Please stop.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Hi, and welcome to this brand new edition of Focal Point on American Family Radio Network. Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio. And I am your congenial, convivial, amiable, and effervescent host, as always, Brian Fisher. Program again is Focal Point. Glad to have you on board, however you happen to be listening to us. Got a lot we are going to get to today. This monstrosity of a spending bill, $1.3 trillion omnibus spending bill. I should just modify omnibus to the word ominous. That's what this thing is. It's an ominous omnibus bill. We'll explain the details as we go. Now, before we jump into all that, I want to invite you to come to our website, the prayer website, pray.afa.net, pray.afa.net. You can read along with us and you can pray along with us as we make our way through the scriptures. Now, Psalm 52 through 54 is where we are today. We finished our study in 2 Samuel yesterday. Now we are back to the Psalms for a brief stretch of time. And, you know, this passage indicates a truth about the Word of God, that it never goes out of date. The Scriptures are as relevant today as they were on the day that they were written. And I want to demonstrate it from this passage of Scripture, Psalm 52 to 54. You know, because people in David's day acted the same way that people on the left act today. There are those in David's day, just as there are those in our day, that oppose and push back on every good idea for our culture and for our public policy. There were people who hated the truth in David's day, just as there are in our day, and just as they criticized David, a man who was standing for the truth of God's word, so they will attack us today for standing for the truth. And I think there's some illumination from these three Psalms that can help us. That is, some timely lessons in these three Psalms, all of which share a similar theme. Now, the setting for Psalm 52, we're told, is at a time when David went to the tabernacle, which is being managed by the priest Ahimelech. He went there to get some food for his men when they were on the run from Saul. And Ahimelech, the high priest, fed them from the bread of the presence. This was bread that normally was reserved for God alone. But he said, look, this is an unusual situation. It's not normally done, but I'm going to bend the rules to support God's anointed leader. Fed them from the bread of the presence. Fed them the bread of the presence. Now, there was a guy there named Doeg the Edomite, not an Israelite, not a believer, Doeg the Edomite. He's not a believer. And he saw David in Ahimelech's house, and he ratted him out to Saul. Remember, Saul's looking for him. They're hiding in caves and the crags and the hills and all that. And so Doeg the Edomite rushes out and narcs off David and his men to Saul. So David and his men had to boogie on out again looking for a place to hide. And David writes this psalm in response. So you look, we'll see if the tactics of the left have changed at all since 980 BC. Now it begins in chapter 52, verse 1. He says, "Why do you boast of evil, O mighty man. So the left brags about things that ought to make them embarrassed and ashamed. They did in David's day, they do in ours. They brag, for instance, in our day about getting prayer band at football games. They have marches to celebrate the slaughter of unborn babies. They have parades to celebrate the sin of sodomy. As Paul puts it in Philippians 3, they glory in their shame. They glory in the things that ought to make them ashamed of themselves. And then David points out that the basic weapon they use in cultural warfare is the lie. They lie about everything important. They know that gullible people and naive people will believe their lies, and they use the talking snake media as their tools of propaganda. They know that the talking snake media will be an echo chamber for them, will amplify their message as they tell these lies. So they will lie about the separation of church and state. They will get us to think that the Constitution prohibits any kind of public acknowledgement of God. They will lie about American history, try to get us to believe this is not a Christian nation by history, heritage, heroes, and values. And they will lie about abortion, try to get us to believe it's just about a blob of protoplasm, or it's all about a woman's health rather than the destruction of a baby. And they will lie about homosexuality, try to get us to believe that it's a benign alternative to heterosexuality instead of the number one cause of HIV/AIDS. They'll even lie about God to try to get him to believe that get us to believe that he does not exist. That's why David mentions in Psalm 53:1, the fool says in his heart, there is no God. So they run fawning profiles of fools who say that, like Stephen Hawking and Richard Dawkins, and try to get us to believe that all the smart people, all the cool kids, don't even believe there is a God. This is how David puts it in Psalm 52, speaking to those who are enemies of the truth, your tongue plots destruction. Like a sharp razor, you worker of deceit, you love evil more than good, and lying more than speaking what is right. You love all words that devour, O deceitful tongue. Strangers have risen against me, or against us, we could say today. Ruthless men seek our lives. They do not set God before themselves. So given that this is the environment in which we live, just as it was in the environment of David's day, what do we do about this when we're surrounded by ruthless people who have a lot of power and tell nothing but lies all day long? They're out to silence us and shut us up. What do we do according to these Psalms? First thing we need to remember is that God's goodness is going to last a lot longer than man's evil. God's goodness is going to last a lot longer than man's evil. He says in Psalm 52, verse 1, the steadfast love of God endures all the day. So his steadfast love is going to outweigh, it's going to outlast the vitriolic hatred of man. God one day is going to completely squash evil men who lie about him and attack us. This is what he says in Psalm 52, verses 5 through 7. God will break you down forever. He will snatch and tear you from your tent. He will uproot you from the land of the living. The righteous shall see and fear, shall laugh at him, saying, see the man who would not make God his refuge, but trusted in the abundance of his riches and sought refuge in his own destruction. Second thing we're to do is never stop believing that God's power to bless is greater than Satan's power to curse. This is what he says in Psalm 54. O God, save me by your name. Vindicate me by your might. O God, hear my prayer. Give ear to the words of my mouth. For strangers have risen against me. Ruthless men seek my life. They do not set God before themselves. Behold, God is my helper. The Lord is the upholder of my life. He will return evil to my enemies. In your faithfulness, put an end to them. So take refuge in God, cling to him, and believe that he will see us through. And at times you just need to take a break from the culture war and just rest in God. Psalm 52, verse 8, I am like a green olive tree in the house of God. I trust in the steadfast love of God forever and ever. I will thank you forever because you have done it. I will wait for your name, for it is good. Well, let's pray. Lord, strangers and ruthless men are attacking us, men without regard for you. Even though they are a disgrace in your eyes, O God, they boast of evil all day long. They even say in their heart that there is no God. We ask you to save us, O God, by your name. Vindicate us by your might. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Did you ever sit down to watch TV with your family only to turn it off because of bad language? TV Guardian is technology that mutes foul language in real time while you're watching television. TV Guardian was born out of the desire to watch a movie with the family without exposing children or adults to coarse or foul language existing in most of today's entertainment. The closed caption feature within all programming is used to look ahead, detect the offensive words, and mute them. Using simple level filters and subfilters, TV Guardian can be used to filter content for your family. Religious references in mainstream programming are often offensive, using God's name in cursing. So TV Guardian offers filtering for those as well. More information is available at tvguardian.com/dish. tvguardian.com/dish.
American Family Radio is grateful for the support of TV Guardian.
And the Lord said, "What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground." My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Corner. Actress and outspoken abortion advocate Martha Plimpton boasted proudly to a Seattle audience that she got her first abortion at age 19 at a Seattle Planned Parenthood, and that it was her best abortion, heads and tails above the rest. 46-year-old Plimpton followed that declaration with a loud yay as she triumphantly stretched her arms skyward. Thomas Jefferson once said, "Indeed, I tremble for my country when I reflect that God is just, that his justice cannot sleep forever."
Listen to the Hamilton Corner, weekdays from 5 to 6 p.m. Central on AFR. For more from Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Howdy and welcome to Focal Point. Brian Fisher here. Glad to have you along for the conversation. I'm afraid I do not have any good news to report to you today. The news from Capitol Hill with regard to the budget, I mean, it's disastrous, ladies and gentlemen. I cannot sugarcoat this thing. This is worse than anything that happened under Barack Obama. This is a staggering thing that we're watching here, and it snuck up on us. This omnibus bill, omnibus means it covers everything. So this funds the government now. This is the budget for the government for the next fiscal year. And it snuck up on us. I mean, who saw this coming? We're busy talking about immigration. We're busy talking about tariffs. We're busy talking about the Mueller investigation. And this little budget bill, this catastrophic, monstrous, all-consuming bill, kind of trolling along, kind of in the quiet waters, and all of a sudden it opens its jaws and wham, closes on the American taxpayer. This is, I mean, I cannot exaggerate, ladies and gentlemen, how horrible this bill is. And it's given to us courtesy of the Republicans that we elected and sent to Washington to stop this kind of insanity. And they promised us they would. They said, send us to Washington, D.C., and we'll get control of the spending. It's out of control. It's out of control because the Democrats don't know how to control spending. You vote for us. You send us back there. You give us the House. Give us the Senate. Give us the White House, and we'll get that cotton-picking budget under control. Just you watch. And this is worse than any budget that Barack Obama submitted, except maybe for the first one that had that awful stimulus in it. So, and this bill was like 2,232 pages, 2,232 pages. The lawmakers didn't get it until last night. 2,232 pages, going to commit the government to spending for the next year. They did not get it till 8:30 last night. Now, I don't care if you started reading at 8:31 and you read until it was time to vote, you're not getting anywhere near through that bill. And remember, this is what drove us up the wall with Obamacare. This is what drove us up the wall. I remember Nancy Pelosi out there saying that ridiculous thing, you got to pass this bill to find out what's in it. Well, that's the truth. We right now do not know everything that's in this bill, and it's going to be dribbling out. You know, as much of the bad stuff as they possibly can keep under wraps, they're going to do that. So I'm predicting that we're going to see more and more just horrible stuff kind of bleed out from this bill as time passes. And it's not that we don't already know about a lot of the terrible, no good, very bad, horrible, no good things that are in this bill right now. For instance, remember the promise from Republicans that we're going to defund Planned Parenthood. Mm-hmm. This bill funds every last bit of Planned Parenthood. There is no reduction in funding for Planned Parenthood. Remember, they told us we're going to build a wall. This bill doesn't offer $1 toward the building of a wall. Now, there's millions of dollars in there for building fences, but there is no money in this bill, $1.3 trillion, and they couldn't find even $1 million to put toward the actual building of a wall. Anybody tells you there's funding for a wall in this thing, they are not telling you the truth. I'm not going to say they're lying to you. Maybe they just don't know any better, but they are not telling you the truth. And remember, we had all these bloviations from leaders in the administration. We're going to defund sanctuary cities. These are cities that are blatantly violating the law. They're committing felonies every day by disobeying federal law. We're going to take their money away. We can't give them money and have them continue to spend it to violate and disobey federal law. Well, it fully funds sanctuary cities. Like I say, all the promises they made to us, this thing is about as bad as it possibly could get. Here's what Rand Paul tweeted out last night. It's a good thing, he says, we have Republican control of Congress, or the Democrats might bust the budget caps. He's referring here to budget caps that were put in place in 2011, bipartisan agreement to put a cap on how fast the budget could go. This budget blows that out of the tub. Good thing we have Republican control of Congress, or the Democrats might bust the budget caps. They might fund Planned Parenthood. They might fund Obamacare. And they might sneak gun control without due process into an omnibus. Wait, what? He says, all that stuff is in this $1.3 trillion omnibus bill. Now, this is just crazy stuff. Let's start with clip R2. This is Mick Mulvaney. This is a guy that used to be a good guy. He was in the House Freedom Caucus. And that's part of why Trump picked him, because he was an economic, fiscal conservative. And he figured, this is a guy I can bring in to run the Office of Management and Budget. The Office of Management and what? Office of Management and Budget. Mick Mulvaney is a conservative. He's been a leader in the House Freedom Caucus. He knows what's what. He knows how to cut budgets. He knows how to keep spending in line. He is my guy. Mick Mulvaney is all over this thing. Here's what he says, clip R2.
For the last, 3, 4, 5, 6 months about trying to get the president's priorities funded, and this omnibus bill does that. It funds national defense. As you heard Sarah mention, it gives the troops the increase that we were trying to get them in their compensation. It funds opioids. It funds school safety. It's a tremendous increase in workforce development, something that doesn't get a lot of attention, but this administration has been pushing since we got here. It actually starts taking a look at funding infrastructure, and it also does a lot of what we wanted, not everything we wanted, but a lot of what we wanted on immigration. So all things considered, when we look at the bill, we have to weigh what we asked for and what we had to give away to give it. Is it perfect? No. Is it exactly what we asked for in the budget? No. Were we ever going to get that? No. That's not how the process works. When appropriation bills have to have 60 votes in the Senate, which they do, you're going to always have to rely on Democrat votes in a Republican majority like we have. We need 9 Democrats to support this bill, so there was no chance of everything that we wanted passing. this is probably a good opportunity to bring up the idea of a line item veto. If the president had that, this bill would look a lot different by the time it became law. But we do not have that opportunity. It'd be a good time to look at the rules in the Senate that drive us to these types of end results. But all things considered, in the balance, the president supports the bill, looks forward to signing it before the funding, the lapse in appropriations by midnight tomorrow night.
So this bill has passed the House, got sent over to the Senate. It's passed the Senate, so it's going to Donald Trump's desk. He has promised to sign this thing. So Mick Mulvaney trying to put lipstick on the pig, but you just can't do that with this thing. There's no way to dress this thing up. You can't put a dress on a sow and take her to the prom. It just doesn't work like that, and that's what they're trying to do on this deal. And notice that Mick Mulvaney puts his finger on exactly what the problem is. He puts his finger on exactly what the problem is, what we have been pounding for the last 9 months. Yeah. It's the Mitch McConnell leaving in place the filibuster, the fake-a-buster, that requires 60 votes in the United States Senate to get anything through that body. There are, count them, 51 Republican senators, even if they all stuck together. You know, and you've got some renegades there. I mean, Lisa Murkowski wanders off into the swamp, and Susan Collins from Maine, she wander off into the trackless desert all the time on stuff. Even if you could keep them corralled, you'd still have 51 votes, and you need 60, which means no matter what you're trying to do, you got to get 9 Democrat votes. Now, the Democrats are not going to vote for a single, solitary, good piece of legislation. They are not going to vote for a good budget under any circumstances, at any time, for any reason, at any point in human history. Human civilization will end before the Democrats will vote for a decent piece of legislation. And remember, the Republicans can do something about this. Mitch McConnell could convene the Senate this afternoon, and they could have a vote. Let's change the rules about the fake-a-buster. Let's get rid of this fake 60-vote threshold, which, remember, is not in the law. It's not in the Constitution. It's completely fabricated. It's completely arbitrary. It has no rootage in history or tradition even. And they could change that rule this afternoon. They could bag that thing. I mean, they've done it for Supreme Court nominations. They did that. This same Senate, under Mitch McConnell's leadership, did it with the vote to confirm Supreme Court nominees. That's why Neil Gorsuch got through with less than 60 votes. Now, they passed tax reform, and they didn't need 60 votes because they passed it under reconciliation. You know how many times a year you can use reconciliation as a tactic? Once. So they burned it. They burned their one trump card on the tax reform bill. And I'm glad they burned it on that. It's a good piece of legislation. But they can't use it again. They shot their bolt on that unless they change the rules. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to go to the end of human history, frustrated, grinding our teeth at what we keep getting out of Congress until Mitch McConnell and the Senate decides to get rid of this lunacy, this fake-a-buster. That's what I call it. It's a fake-a-buster because it's fake. It's phony. It's arbitrary. It's not required by law, not required by anything. Senate can change it anytime they want, and they've shown they can do it in the past. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you, I mean, this is horrible. I mean, you know, we're going to illustrate that in a little more detail.
Yeah, you sound a little upset.
Oh, man. Man, just...
You know, these are the kind of stories we expect.
In fact, stay tuned. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, stay tuned because Jeff is going to duct tape my head on the break.
Yeah, I was going to say, these are the kind of stories we expected to be talking about if Hillary Clinton had won.
Yeah, that's right. This is the kind of shows we had when Barack Obama was the president. Mm-hmm. We had this every year at this time. We had these same kind of conversations back then. So yeah. So anyway, we'll see what I look like with silver duct tape wrapped all over my head. But you know, anyway. So it's all the stuff that frustrated us about a Democratic leadership, a Democratic president, a Democratic House, a Democratic Senate, and here we are with the people that we elected. But the problem, ladies and gentlemen, let's be very, very clear. There is one problem here that has to be dealt with first. Doesn't mean there wouldn't be other problems, because I think the Republicans keep this in place because it enables them to support monstrosities like this. And then they can say, well, we didn't have a choice because there's a 60-vote threshold. Well, why do we have that? And they don't want to talk about that. So the campaign is to get rid of this fake-a-buster. That's got to be job one. We'll be right back with more. Stay with us.
This is Dr. Richard Lamb, president of Southern Evangelical Seminary. Welcome to Bringing Every Thought Captive. Yesterday, I shared with you the eloquent testimony of John Franklin Stevens, a young man with Down syndrome who addressed the United Nations Human Rights Council in Geneva and delivered a tremendous and moving plea for recognition of his and his fellow Down syndrome people's humanity. Mr. Stevens' address is one you won't forget. Given the relentless assault in the womb resulting in the killing of hundreds of thousands of such Down syndrome babies, Stevens gives several reasons why we should resist such callous disregard for human life, in addition to the fact that it's barbaric and pagan. First, Stevens points out that Down syndrome individuals are a genetic gift to society. Down syndrome people have genetic anomalies which make them a blueprint for medical research in areas that include soft tissue cancer, heart disease, immune system disorders, and Alzheimer's disease. Stevens also points out that Down syndrome individuals are, quote, an unusually powerful source of happiness, end quote. He cited a Harvard study that showed that people with Down syndrome, their parents, their siblings, and the people close to them are all happier than society at large. This study explains the phenomenon I've experienced repeatedly over the half-century I've been defending all unborn human life, including special needs children. Time after time, I've had people, parents, siblings, etc., come to me after I spoke or writing me later, each expressing some version of thank you for speaking up for special children. God has blessed our family with a special child, and we have learned so much about the really important things in life we would never have known had God not sent our family a special child. The first few times this happened, I was shocked. Like most parents, I wanted my children to be, quote, normal and healthy. And yet, here was a seemingly endless stream of parents and siblings giving a powerful testimony to Down syndrome children, bringing them special joy and fulfillment. This continues to happen on a regular basis, and I'm no longer shocked. The Harvard study quantifies the accuracy of these episodic experiences. More about this tomorrow. This is Richard Land.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher
on American Family Radio.
Listen to the audio podcast or download today's program at afr.net. You can also read Brian Fisher's columns at afa.net.
afa.net.
Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point, American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. It's invisible duct tape, but it's there nonetheless, and it's the only thing that's keeping my brain from exploding.
Yeah, Debbie called and didn't want me to do that. She was afraid it would pull your eyebrows out if we took it off.
Well, yeah, my eyebrows, that's about the only decent feature that I've got, so we got to protect that. So again, it funds sanctuary cities. I don't know if I mentioned that. It fully funds sanctuary. Yeah, I did talk about it. It funds sanctuary cities. There's no money for a border wall. There's money for border fence. You find the word fence or fencing in here 4 or 5 times. You don't find the word wall in there ever. Not once. No cuts in federal spending. It just keeps ballooning and ballooning out of control.
What about gun control? Isn't there some stuff
Well,
in
I
there?
don't know the details on that. Apparently they snuck something in about gun control in there. I don't know the details of that. But we don't need anything there.
Right.
You know, we got the Second Amendment. That's the only gun control legislation that we need. So.
And meanwhile, you did mention that the Planned Parenthood still getting our money.
Yeah, Planned Parenthood is now fully funded. This is probably the 5th or 6th time now. This is the 5th or 6th time now that Republicans have voted. They have voted to fund Planned Parenthood because we've had all these continuing resolutions, 4 of them, and then this budget makes 5 votes on the budget. Everyone funds Planned Parenthood, and the Republicans voted for every one of those puppies. So despite their promises, they've had 5 opportunities to vote against funding for Planned Parenthood, have not taken advantage of a single one of those opportunities. So it's, it's hard to exaggerate, again, like I said, just exactly how bad this thing is. And meanwhile, the national debt grew $1 trillion in the last 6 months. Wow. This is without precedent in our nation's history. Remember, we were gagging over the fact that President Obama was giving us deficits of $1.4 trillion a year. We're going to run twice that this year with complete Republican control of the budget. You know, and Donald Trump, you may not remember this, but he signed a debt limit suspension in February, just wiped it out. There now is no debt limit, so Congress has unlimited borrowing potential, or really printing potential. They can print as much money as they want. Now, it's just monopoly money, ladies and gentlemen. They can print as much money as they want until March 1 of 2019. So we're accelerating the rate at which the national debt is accumulating. The pace is accelerating beyond anything that we have seen in U.S. history. You know, back in Bill Clinton's first term, by the way, they had a $1 trillion increase in the deficit. You know how long it took? 43 months under Bill Clinton, under a Democrat. Now we're doing it in 6 months. Now the projection is that we will have $1 trillion deficits running permanently by next year, and the debt will exceed the size of the entire economy within a decade. So that's what's coming. Again, let me just give you the wording from this bill for the border fence. $251 million for 14 miles, get ready, of secondary fencing, quote, end quote. $445 million for 25 miles of, quote, primary pedestrian levee fencing, end quote. Rio Grande Valley border sector as well, $196 million, quote, for fencing, end quote, along the same border. $445 million for, quote, the replacement of existing primary pedestrian fencing, end quote, along the southwestern border. Then there's $38 million for planning and designing for a border barrier, $196 million for acquisition of border security technology, cameras and motion sensors and all that kind of stuff. I remember, it does not cut funding to sanctuary cities, and it does not increase the number of detention beds or the number of Border Patrol agents or ICE agents. These were all a part of what Donald Trump requested, and he got none of that in this bill. Here's what Rand Paul said about this thing. 2,232 pages. Rand Paul said, you have to know what's in it, Rand Paul said. Really, should we be looking at a 2,000-page bill with 24 hours to decide what's in them? It's really not a good way to run your government. That would be the understatement of the century. He says this, and he got in big trouble last time because he slowed the process down because they were spending like drunken Democrats, and they got all over him for that. And he says this, look, I'm upset that we're spending like every Democrat that we criticized. I ran for office because I thought the Obama spending and $1 trillion annual deficits were a real problem for our country, and now Republicans are doing the same thing. So I'm giving them the same grief that I gave to Obama. Good for you, Rand Paul. Another loss is they gutted language that would have ended the Johnson Amendment. They gutted this language. This is the amendment that ties the hands of churches, meaning they cannot endorse candidates for Congress. Pastors have to be careful, at least that's the theory. They don't really, but they think they do. Have to be careful about preaching on contemporary cultural themes for fear the IRS is going to take away their tax-exempt status. It's never happened. So a lot of it's just bogus, but there was a repeal of this amendment, the Johnson Amendment, and they gutted the language, and the Republicans cooperated with that thing. This thing expands guest worker visas. You know, we're trying to get control of immigration. We're trying to reduce immigration, but buried deep in this ominous omnibus proposal is a provision that would more than double the annual cap of H-2B visas. This is the program that allows companies to bring in foreign workers to work in seasonally dependent industries like landscaping, forestry, seafood processing, and tourism. Visas are limited by statute to 66,000 per year. This is going to double it to roughly 120,000. Now, it's interesting. There is a here's Jim Jordan on the $1.3 trillion spending bill. The American people did not elect Democrats to control the United States Congress. They elected Republicans. I don't think we told the voters, he says, when we were running for the job, and they gave us the privilege to come here and serve, that to continue to fund Planned Parenthood, and we're going to restrict Second Amendment liberties, lest some bureaucrat take away Second Amendment's rights in the court of law. I don't think they said we are going to fund this gateway earmark boondoggle project and not fund the border wall, and he goes on from there. But you'll be pleased to know that the budget will increase funding for taxpayer-funded art. So no money for a border wall, but hey, you want some more obscene, vulgar, ridiculous, splotchy taxpayer-funded art? You got it right here in this budget. So the House passed this thing 256 to 167. 90 Republicans voted against this bill. Notice that more Republicans voted against this bill than Democrats. 77 Democrats voted against this bill. So this is a Republican bill. It's got their fingerprints all over it, and more Republicans in the House voted against it than Democrats. We're trying to get the numbers on the vote in the Senate to see which senators voted against this monstrosity.
Hopefully they included some money in there for lawnmowers because they're going to have to mow the grass along the border now.
But what we need right now is some taxpayer-funded duct tape. Yeah, but like you're right. They got to, remember Nancy Pelosi said, we got to mow the grass along the border. That's how we can stop those illegal aliens apparently slithering through the grass on their tummies to cross our borders. Now, here's a couple of sound bites on this. Here's Mick Mulvaney. Listen to this guy try to justify this bill. Oh, man. Clip R2.
We already played it.
Did we play Mick Mulvaney? Okay, my bad. I am well, that's why I had my duct.
Yeah, it was over your ears at that time.
That's part of the brain that leaked out.
We were worried for your safety.
Yeah.
I'm telling you. I was fixing to text you. Yeah. I know.
Now, here is Scott Perry. He is a Republican from Pennsylvania. And this guy, could have said anything that anybody in the House Freedom Caucus could have said. Scott Perry on the budget. Let's listen.
I don't think anybody, Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal, went home and campaigned saying they wanted to vote for the the largest spending increase in history, 13% above last year. When it comes to the swamp, there's one thing that the swamp agrees on, it's spending the taxpayers' money. There's always agreement to be found there when it comes to trimming the budget and pulling your belts in and so on and so forth, like homeowners have to do when they're managing their budgets. There's not much of an appetite here for that, and you're seeing evidence of that right now. This is just where it is, and every time, I've been here for 5 years, Harris, every single time, we don't like the process. This has got to change. We can't keep doing this, yet every single time we keep doing the same thing, which is why folks like me say absolutely not. We're going to fight this with everything we have, even if it's only one vote at a time. It's the vote our constituents gave us, and we're voting no to bankrupting our country. The one thing we're sent here to do is to prioritize the taxpayer spending of their the federal money. And the House passed 12 appropriations bills. How many appropriations bills did the Senate pass? They keep on working with this archaic 60-vote rule. And I will tell you, Harris, the two big things they got passed, a Supreme Court justice and tax relief for the American taxpayers, it took 51 votes. I think I got a news flash for them. The process that they're using now, these rules that aren't they're not enumerated in the Constitution. They just made them up over there, which is fine, but they don't work to progress our government in the 21st century, and they got to take a look at that. If they want to pass spending bills, they're going to have to get people on board, and if it only takes 51, that's where you have to be.
All right, so he's another guy focusing on this 51 deal, this fake-a-buster, 60 votes. And think about it for a second. When they only needed 51 votes, look what we got when all it took was 51 votes. We got Neil Gorsuch on the Supreme Court, and we got an excellent tax reform bill. That's what's possible when you only need 51 votes, when you only need a majority in the Senate.
Scott Perry is saying the same thing we've been saying, or you've been saying
just
for
like
9 months?
Yeah.
Or more?
Yeah. Let's listen to what?
No, I'm curious. I mean, is this something that Trump can veto?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that when we come back. Let me play one more soundbite. No, I'll save the Kennedy soundbite because that's good. I'm glad you brought that up. We had one soundbite. I don't know who said it. Talk about a line item veto. Mulvaney talked about a line item veto. Well, there is a way that President Trump can issue a line item veto, only you don't call it that. What Donald Trump could do is to go through this monstrosity, and he could identify, says, I'm going to veto this bill, and here's why. I'm going to veto it because it funds Planned Parenthood. I'm going to veto it because there's no funding for a border wall. I'm going to veto it because it has funding for sanctuary cities. I'm going to veto it because it has funding, taxpayer-funded art. So you want this to pass, then you got to do something about those 4 things. Those 4 line items in the budget, you got to do something about that if you want me to sign this thing. And that would require the Senate to get 67 votes to override that. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Hi, this is David Barton of Wall Builders Live, inviting you to join me here on American Family Radio this weekend. We take the ideas of the Founding Fathers and apply those ideas to the major issues of the day. Our guests include those who are in the headlines as well as experts on issues facing this great nation. Along the way, you'll discover the role that faith has played in our nation's history as well as in dealing with the issues we face right now. Join us Saturday afternoon at 2 Central here on American Family Radio.
This scroll is the title deed to this earth, and through the tribulation that is going to take place on this earth, Jesus Christ is going to once again gain control of the earth that belongs to Him.
Join Dr. David Jeremiah for his series Escape the Coming Night, next time on Turning Point.
5:30 a.m. and 7 p.m. Central on American Family Radio.
Are you a responsible person who finds yourself growing deeper and deeper in credit card debt and you're not sure how to fix the problem? Then get ready for a toll-free number that will put you on a path to financial recovery. Trinity Debt Management is a non-profit organization that will consolidate your accounts into one easy-to-manage monthly payment, put a stop to late fees and over-limit charges, and reduce your interest rates by as much as 60%. You'll save thousands and become debt-free for keeps. It's not a loan. It's a smart way to relieve your stress, meet your obligations, and preserve your self-respect. If your debt has you down, we should talk. Gather up your bills and call this toll-free number for a free, no-obligation debt analysis. 1-800-788-1813. That's 1-800-788-1813. If you're in debt and you need help, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point, American Family Radio. I'd love to get your take. It's time for you to weigh in on this budget that the Republicans in the House and the Senate passed today. I still don't have a vote total on the Senate results. We're trying to look for those. Haven't found them yet. I want to find out which senators voted against this thing, and I'm going to give them a gold medal flower bag for their efforts because we need somebody in there to stick up for rationality.
So is this bill on its way to the president's desk?
Yeah,
now?
soon as he gets it, he's going to sign it, and then it's a done deal. Yeah. Number to call is 888-589-8840. 888-589-8840 is the number to call to weigh in on this omnibus bill. $1.3 trillion, going to raise the national debt by $1 trillion bucks. We've just raised it in the last 6 months by $1 trillion bucks. It's going to do the same thing over the course of the next year. 888-589-8840. 888-589-8840 is the number to call. Now, one more soundbite. This is from Senator John Kennedy in Louisiana. In fact, the best part of his whole soundbite we had to cut because we got the word from on high that it was not suitable for family listening.
A little colorful.
Yeah, a little colorful. I mean, it wasn't that bad, and I would be willing to bet that 90% of you would have absolutely no problem with it at all. He uses sort of a, kind of ordinary lingo to refer to the act of urination. But because it's what it's talking about, we decided we didn't want to take the chance of offending some people listening on it. So the most colorful part of this we had to cut out of this thing. But here's the rest of what we can use. Senator John Kennedy from Louisiana.
Can I just ask you about the omnibus?
Yeah.
Now that it's out
it
there?
sucks.
You're not going to vote for it.
I wouldn't. I'm going to vote against it twice if they won't let me.
Well, you're going to vote against letting it get a vote before the deadline of the shop.
I don't know yet. I don't even know what's in the thing. Okay? This is an embarrassment. I said it yesterday, and I meant it. no thought whatsoever to adding over $1 trillion in debt.
So you may do what Rand Paul did and let this.
I don't know yet, but I know I'm not going to vote. I'm not going to vote for it.
I'm not going to vote for it. I'd like to vote for this thing twice if they'd let me. So that's not much doubt about where Senator John Kennedy stands on this bill. All right, 888-589-8840. That's the number, 888-589-8840. Let's go to Emily in Virginia. Emily, talk to me. What do you think?
I think that the Republicans are spending themselves right out of the 2018 election. I think it's deliberate. I think they really want Donald Trump impeached, and the way they can do it is to go against everything that he wants. That's my personal opinion.
All right, Emily. Well, you make a good point about both the antagonism in the Republican Party toward Donald Trump, as well as the danger that this represents for the fall elections. I think you're exactly right. Then we talked about a lot of other things that the Republicans could do to get them in trouble, get themselves in trouble for the 2018 midterms, but there is nothing they could have done that is worse than this to hurt their chances for winning re-election in 2018. All right, Emma, that's a great observation. You know, they seem to be so blinded, partly by their distaste for Donald Trump. They're blinded by that. The vituperation, the hatred, the dislike, the whatever they have in their hearts toward him. It's just visceral, and it'll drive a number of them to vote just to stick a finger in his eye. That's not statesmanlike. It's not mature, but they'll do it, and there you have it. And then I think Emily's right. This is could be disastrous for Republican chances in 2018. All right, Emily, very good call. I appreciate that. Insightful. Let's go to Gabe in Texas. Gabe, what do you think? Talk to me.
Well, I've got a question for you, Brian. Governor Walker up in Wisconsin had to face a recall election, and now they're talking about giving the president line item veto. Well, how about giving us congressional recall power? I mean, those guys get in there and they don't want to do their job. We shouldn't have to wait for 4 years. We should be able to call them for it right now.
Yeah. Well, and here's the way to think about this, Gabe. We've got a chance to recall some of these guys in November. We have a chance to recall every Republican that voted for this thing in the House of Representatives. Every Republican that voted for this thing will be on the ballot in November. Those jokers can be recalled. And there are going to be a number of senators that voted for this thing. They, too, can be recalled. So, recall be a possibility, but we get that opportunity every 2 years, every 6 years, and we just haven't done a very good job at using it. And here's the other thing. You think about this. Why should the Democrats even work hard to keep Republicans out of office? Because everybody is on the same page. Everybody's on the same page. It's like Putin said. He didn't care who won the presidential election. He says it's silly that they think I'm trying to help one candidate over the other, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who gets elected, because they are all the same. So anyway, I think that's a good thing. All right, Gabe, we congressional recall, one possibility to stick in the back of the hopper. All right, let's go to John in Michigan.
Yes, Brian.
Yes, sir.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. The bill is not going to work. I don't like it. But it's something in that bill. Number two thing I don't like it, because it's not going to pass, is
John, why won't it work? Tell me why it won't work.
Well, the wall won't work because I can remember, I'm 66 years old. I can remember some people was called boat people from Cuba.
Yeah.
The Mexicans will take boats round to Mexico into California, Oregon, and Washington State. That's going north. And coming east, they could take boats to Florida, round Florida, up East Coast, into Alabama.
Well, John, let me ask you this question. What do we do then?
We can't do nothing, because I don't think we're going to be brave enough to build a wall all the way around the United States.
Well, I thought you said a wall wouldn't work, though.
That's the only way he's going to do it.
Yeah. All right, John, listen, I appreciate your call. And some people think that the wall won't work. I tell you, a wall along the southern border will work. I mean, they've had SWAT teams and tactical teams trying to scale that thing and get over it. They can get to the top. One guy got to the top, couldn't get down the other side. They had to bring a cherry picker out to save his life, to keep him from falling 30 feet and injuring himself. And I think, if we have Coast Guard. We got to beef up the Coast Guard to patrol the harbors and control the places where they could come in. I think we can reduce that to a trickle. I'm sure that John is right. They will try to do it. They'll try to use vessels to come in, but I think we can control that certainly better. We can certainly control it like we do the land crossing if we're willing to try. All right, let's go to Mark in Mississippi. Mark, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Hello, thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned gun control and I was on Senator Cochran's website this morning, and in his summary of the omnibus bill, he states that the fixed NICS bill of 2017, I think it's Senate 2135, is in this omnibus.
Okay.
And I got to look at that bill. It puts $625 million over 5 years into helping state improve the mental health, drug abuse, domestic abuse, all that into NICS. I've been looking at this for a couple of weeks after Parkland, and this is a hugely, hugely, hugely complex, different in every state, full of who's responsible, who adjudicates someone as mentally ill, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It goes on and on. What shocked me was there was a bill, Improved NICS, of 2007. It became law. It put $925 million over 10 years into the same thing that S2135 does today. And we've tried this once, and $1 billion later, we're no different. We're no better off than we were 10 years ago.
Hi, Mark. Well, that is exceptionally helpful information to have, that we have tried this before. We dumped almost twice as much money into this kind of program a decade ago, and we have nothing, absolutely nothing to show for it. If we can't spend $1 billion on this thing and have it make a difference today, why would we want to throw another $500 million at the thing today? All right, Mark, good for you for doing your homework. Most people have probably forgotten all about that, but Mark, in our listening audience, he remembered that, tracked it down, and gave us some very helpful information. Let's go to Bill in Billington, West Virginia. Bill, what's on your mind? Talk to me.
Hi, Brian.
Hey.
I called my congressman's office this morning. They didn't know how he was going to vote. I just called while I was listening to your program, and he did vote for it.
And who was your congressman?
McKinley.
McKinley?
Dave McKinley.
All right. Is he Republican or Democrat?
They should have been. Well, I don't know how he got back in this, and he's a Republican.
Okay.
So but I think you're going to find a lot of them like that.
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you, that's something for people to keep an eye on. West Virginia has been a conservative state, a lot of Republicans in their House contingent, their House representation, a lot of Republicans in that group. And so if you got a Republican, and you want to know how he voted, I mean, call his office and find out. If you want to call, there's one number you can call to get hold of any senator or any representatives. It's 202-224-3121. 202-224-3121, and just ask for your senator's office or your representative's office. They'll help you. Just give them your zip code, and they'll put you in touch with your senators and also with your representatives. So they'll give you all the help you need. 202-224-3121. We need to get this information because we need to remember this coming November. All right, well, that's it for the first hour of Focal Point. We'll be back after the news break. I've got a story I want to tell you about a game in 1963 that broke the color line in NCAA basketball for good, and it involved a team, interestingly, from Mississippi. So you'll want to hear that story. We'll be back after the news.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
1milliondads.com is where men can learn and grow together as men of the cross. Close families and even national revival begin at home with strong fathers in the faith. Go to the website, read the articles. You're not alone. 1milliondads.com. Lead, or others will.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Steve Pugh. Republican lawmakers rolled out a $1.3 trillion budget proposal late Wednesday as President Trump makes public his reaction to it. More from Jill Nadeau.
The president apparently only partly happy with the $1.3 trillion proposal, sending out a tweet saying, got $1.6 billion to start wall on southern border and $700 billion to rebuild our military. But he went on to complain that Democrats didn't come up with a plan to deal with DACA, the young immigrants brought to the U.S. illegally as children. He also said, had to waste money on Dem giveaways. While House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi is approving the measure, saying it includes money for veterans, the National Institutes of Health, and families fighting opioid addiction. In Washington, Jill Nadeau, Fox News.
A 25-minute cell phone video left behind by the bomber whose deadly explosive terrorized Austin, Texas for weeks details the differences among the weapons he built and amounts to a confession, according to police. But his motive remains a mystery. Mark Anthony Condit, an unemployed college dropout who bought bomb-making materials at Home Depot, recorded the video hours before he died after detonating one of his own devices as SWAT teams closed in. Meanwhile, a decades-old mail bombing case in Alabama is now drawing comparisons to the series of bombings in Austin this month. Tom Rigotti reports.
It's been nearly 30 years since federal judge Robert S. Vance was killed when a mail bomb blew up at his home in suburban Birmingham. The state is just now preparing to execute 82-year-old Walter Leroy Moody Jr. for the murder, with a date set for April 19th. He's been on death row since being convicted in 1996. The long-delayed execution comes as Texas officials grapple with a deadly 3-week bombing spree that ended Wednesday when the suspect blew himself up. Prosecutors say Moody targeted Vance out of anger over a court decision. Vance's son says he feels for the Texas bombing victims. Tom Rigotti, Fox News.
A pro-family leader and conservative columnist says he is glad he left California years ago because the state has gone completely bonkers. Chad Groening explains.
Robert Knight is a conservative activist and columnist for the Washington Times. His latest column is called The Great California Train Wreck. Knight, who lived 8 years in California, says when seeing news about his former state, it's like reading the details of a train wreck after having safely disembarked a comfortable time ago.
We moved away years ago, and I'm glad we did, because the state has gone completely bonkers. The liberals took it over, and their progressive policies have driven it into the ground in so many ways. And now, even though they're facing a massive budget deficit, they are upping the price tag on the bullet train.
And Knight says that the $77.3 billion Los Angeles to San Francisco project isn't projected to be open until 2033, if at all.
So this could be the train that goes to nowhere, and people are going to pay dearly for it.
And Knight says the people of California are continuing to pay dearly for illegal immigration.
The worst part is that they have encouraged uncontrolled immigration while increasing welfare benefits and declaring the state a sanctuary state. It's all adding up to chaos. Adding up to anarchy.
Knight says California is a train wreck in progress. It's impossible to look away. I'm Chad Groening.
The latest nor'easter rolled into New England this morning as millions of others in the Northeast began to dig out from the storm that dumped more than a foot of snow in some places, knocked out power to tens of thousands, and had many wishing for more spring-like weather. Janice Dean has the rest of your forecast.
Our fourth nor'easter in less than a month that brought over a foot of snow to several states is still bringing snow, wind, coastal flooding, and travel delays across New England. Conditions will improve throughout the day today. Meanwhile, on the West Coast, a slow-moving system will bring the potential for very heavy rain, flash flooding, and heavy snow across the mountains. This will be a big concern for areas prone to flooding, including recent burn areas. I'm Janice Dean, Fox News.
Shares were mixed in Asia today after U.S. stocks finished with small losses Wednesday following the Federal Reserve's interest rate hike. American Family News is online at onenewsnow.com and download the One News Now mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
This is Steve Conover inviting you to listen to the Friends of Israel Today each week on this station. Here's our host and Bible teacher, Chris Katulka.
Hey everybody, the Friends of Israel Today is a unique radio show that teaches biblical truth for changing times. We do this through Q&A, timely interviews, dramatic readings from the life of Holocaust survivor Zvi Kalisher, and of course, Bible teaching.
To learn more, visit foiradio.org.
Join us for Friends of Israel Today, Sunday morning at 11:30 Central on American Family Radio.
Why are Democrats so happy about this thing? I mean,
because it's good for them. Well, they got their priorities in there and we didn't. This is a rather dark day.
In every situation over the past year, you have been carrying water for Donald Trump. This is not who you used to be.
The fact that it applies to Trump now, rather than applying to Bill Clinton, is why people like you have turned against me.
We're seeing all these people from the intelligence community, Brennan, Clapper, all of them piling on and exposing themselves to be left-wing Democrats who hate the president.
Bob Mueller should be allowed to finish his job. I think it was an excellent appointment.
It amazes me that white evangelicals, specifically white male evangelicals in the South, seem to not care.
If we were in high school, I'd take you behind the gym and beat the hell out of them.
Please stop pretending you're a rebel. Please stop.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Welcome back to the second hour of Focal Point on American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Just want to go back. I mentioned we had to do some excising on that one soundbite from Senator Kennedy from Louisiana. I just want to be sure that you understand, I have no problem with that. We need to be very, very sensitive to our listening audience. We do not want to unnecessarily offend anybody by including some colloquialism that people in our listening audience might find offensive. So I want to be sure that you understand I have absolutely no problem with doing that. Better to be safe about something like that than to be sorry. So I got no problem with that at all. You know, especially if it's not something that's critical to the point that you're trying to make by using the soundbite. So I just wanted to make sure we cleared that up. Now, but again, you know, we're looking at this deal where, you know, wow. Yeah. It just kind of takes your breath away to see how careless these people apparently seem to be about, about responding and to the requests of their constituents. You got Walker Wildman. Walker, can you grab a mic if you would? Have you got some of the figures there for us? Okay, Walker Wildman, who is the assistant to the president here at Focal Point, and an all-around really good guy. You can hear his program, Exposing Washington. Man, is this going to give Walker some stuff to talk about. But Walker, we're looking for some roll call vote on this thing, and I particularly want to know the names of the Republican senators that voted against this thing. So what can you tell us from the roll call?
Well, I have the House roll call.
Just the House.
But I don't believe the Senate has passed it yet. I kept looking on the Senate website.
Oh, I kept hearing over the lunch hour when I was doing my final prep that it had passed. Maybe they were just saying it had passed the House.
Yeah, I know it's passed the House for sure. I have the roll call here on the House, and there's a lot of Republicans who voted for it.
Well, I think it was
so too many to list. It looks like
197 that voted against it, so that would leave about 157 or something like that voted for it.
Yeah, 100 and the final vote at 12:59 p.m. Eastern today was this. 145 Republicans voted for the omnibus bill, and 90 Republicans voted against. So, but the good news, if we can pull good news out of this, is that it looks like through the American Family Association Action Alert this morning and other pressure from other conservative groups, we peeled off about 20 House Republican votes today. So back in February, basically the blueprint of this bill was passed back in February, the terms of the agreement, so to speak. But then today was the official passage of the budget. Well, back in February, the bill passed with 167 Republican votes. Today, it only passed with 145 Republican votes. So about 22 Republicans dropped off,
peeled off
from February to now. So.
Now, do we have any idea when the Senate's going to vote on this thing? I thought they already had. So I've got
the Senate. They're probably going to vote on it today because they admit from the reports I'm reading that they are ready to go home. they want to fly home on Friday.
Man, I think that's a mistake. They want to get home and face their constituents with this.
Well, they're not
going
to face their constituents.
No,
trust me.
Hide.
Yeah, they're going to go on vacation. But they will do anything to get home on time, even if it means doing bad things for the country. And so they're admitting, look, we got to catch our flights home. So let's get this passed. I don't know what's in it, but let's pass it.
And I tweeted out our action alert. What Walker's talking about is we sent an action alert out this morning, gave you an opportunity to contact your 2 senators and your 1 representative. That's still active. You can go to our Facebook page. I put the link on our Facebook page, the Focal Point Facebook page. You can go there and find the link to sign that petition, or make the call or send the email. I sent an email to my 2 senators this morning. I sent an email to my member of the House of Representatives. So there's still time. If the Senate hasn't voted on it, there's still time for you to take action on that. You can make a phone call or you can send an email to both of your senators who, our information is, have not yet voted on this thing, and you can get their attention and let them know that you do not want them to vote for this deal. So what did you, well, I guess that's neither here nor there because that's too parochial to talk about how our Mississippi delegation voted. But anyway, keep an eye on that. And again, get that action alert. If you're on Twitter, I sent it out. If you follow me on Twitter, I sent it out on Twitter. If you have access to the internet, you can go to our Focal Point Facebook page. Just put Focal Point Brian Fisher. Focal Point Brian Fisher in your Facebook search bar, and it'll pop right up. And we've got a link to it, so you can. We've already pre-written the letter. I mean, I retooled it a little bit, but all you got to do is just put something in the subject line, put your name to it, and send it. Take all of 30 seconds to get that thing done, and your senators, both of them, can hear from you. All right, Walker, anything else we need to know about this thing?
No, but there is hope that President Trump might veto this.
Okay.
Because I emailed personally my contact in the White House today, forwarded the action alert to the White House. They acknowledged the receiving it. And people are frustrated. All the conservative groups and even some of the moderate groups and members are frustrated because maybe they like the bill, what's in it, but they didn't have time to read it. They didn't have time to read it. So it was released at 8:16 East Coast time last night, and they voted on it at lunchtime today. So if that would be reading, like I calculated it, 90 pages an hour.
Wow.
90 pages an hour of all this it's very complicated
legalese
stuff.
And numbers and
there's
stuff.
No way they read it.
Yeah.
So,
well, and we just, we rang the changes on Nancy Pelosi and that 2,700-page Obamacare bill, and nobody had a chance to read it. Well, shame on the Republicans. Shame on them. Mm-hmm. I mean, they have no business now. They have no right. You hear a single one of these Republicans criticize Democrats for passing monstrous bills under cover of darkness. They got no leg to stand on. All right, Walker, well, listen, thanks for dropping by. And, again, we're going to try to follow that thing. If the Senate does vote on that, if you could keep an eye on that and it happens before the end of this hour, run something over to us. We would appreciate it.
All right, thanks.
So can I hang on to this thing?
Yes, sir.
All right, great. Thank you. All right, Walker Wildman, got to say roll call vote for the House vote, and maybe we can get a link to this and get this up.
When is his show on again?
Page. His show is on Saturdays, but I do not know what time.
Oh, okay.
It's in the afternoon.
I'll look it up.
Early to mid-afternoon. Okay, so we'll try to keep an eye out on that.
It's not too late to contact your senator.
No,
right?
It's not. There's still a chance to make a difference with the Senate. And remember, Walker said the action alert that went out this morning, and it might have peeled off as many as 20 representatives. Now, do we have time for that Louis Gohmert clip? Yeah, let's wedge it in. This is Louis Gohmert talking about this omnibus bill. Let's listen.
This is really tragic. A massive spending bill. And the truth is, the House did our job. We passed 12 appropriations bills. We had a budget. And the Senate didn't do their job. And it doesn't appear they're ever going to until, number one, we get rid of cloture, the 60-vote requirement, and go with 51. President Trump's been great on that. And then and by the way, the Constitution only requires a majority. That was a superimposition by the Senate.
Why are Democrats so happy about this thing? I mean,
because it's good for them. Well, they got their priorities in there, and we didn't. This is a rather dark day.
You know, a rather dark day. Nobody had time to even read this thing. Got to pass it to find out what's in it. All right, so still an opportunity perhaps to make a difference over in the Senate. Go to the Facebook page, get the link, fill it out. Be right back. Stay with us.
Here's Twyla Brace, president of CCHF, with today's Health Freedom Minute.
At a large health information technology conference, artificial intelligence and computer-driven diagnoses and treatment decisions were prominent themes. The former chairman of Google is thrilled with electronic health records because at last he can get access to the patient data he has always wanted. He supports artificial intelligence for making treatment decisions, but said computers make errors that confound technicians. So he said a doctor should always oversee the computers. But another speaker wants to make it harder for doctors that don't want to comply with computerized treatment protocols. Will doctors want to oversee computers? And will you accept care from computers?
Learn more about protecting your healthcare choices. Sign up for the CCHF Weekly e-News Update at cchfreedom.org. That's cchfreedom.org.
American Family Radio and Preborn are partnering to help save babies' lives throughout America.
Well, my name is Dan Steiner, and I'm the president of Preborn. Ultrasound truly is a game changer. When a mom comes into a pregnancy center under pressure to abort her child, perhaps the dad's gone, perhaps her mother is pressuring her. Most of the time in her heart she doesn't want to abort, but what she needs is something that will give her the strength to choose life against the pressures, forcing her to consider abortion. That's the ultrasound. If she hears her baby's heartbeat and sees that baby on ultrasound, 80% of the time she'll choose life.
Be a compassionate answer to abortion and help save a baby's life. Go to preborn.com now. That's preborn.com. Or dial pound 250 and say keyword baby. That's pound 250 and say baby. All gifts are tax deductible. Your love can save a life.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point, American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. We're going to see if we can get this roll call vote up on our Facebook page, get a link to it. Jeff, you may have to do a little work, but the link is right down there at the bottom of the page. Okay. See if you can resurrect that link and put a link on the Facebook page, and then you can find out how your representatives vote. I just looked up all the representatives in Mississippi. 2 of our Republican representatives voted for this monstrosity. 1 of them didn't. The other one is a Democrat, and of course he voted for it. So in Mississippi, 3 of our 4 representatives voted for this thing, including 2 Republicans who ought to know better. In Idaho, my home state, 1 of our representatives, who's a big-time rhino, he voted for this thing. The other guy, Raul Labrador, hardcore conservative, voted against it. Now,
hey, Brian.
Yes, sir.
I think if you're on blood pressure medicine, you might not want to go look at that link.
Yeah. Or be sure you grab a roll of duct tape with you to go to your computer. All right, what I want to do is I want to talk about a story that I think is a very interesting story. It's a little bit of a change of pace, and I hope you'll appreciate the change of pace. I kind of felt like we needed to do something to, because of the intensity of what we've been talking about in the last hour. But I find this a really cool story. I'm a Mississippi transplant. This is my adopted home state. So I love to read stories about Mississippi history and about what happened in Mississippi along the way. And here is a great story, a story that makes people from Mississippi actually look good when it comes to the issue of race and racism and segregation. This goes all the way back to 1963. Now, if you follow NCAA, this story will be interesting to you whether you follow basketball or not. But if you've been following March Madness on NCAA, You know that Loyola of Chicago has made it to the round of 16. I think the last time they were in Sweet 16 was like 1985. But what a lot of people don't know or don't remember is that Loyola of Chicago actually won the NCAA championship in 1963. Their nickname is the Ramblers, almost as good as the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, whose name is the Retrievers. Yeah. But Loyola Chicago, they are the Ramblers. And they won the NCAA title in 1963. I remember that. I was 12 years old at the time, and I remember reading about that. It was kind of a striking thing because nobody had heard of them before. Anyway, what Loyola Chicago's journey through the brackets this year has done is reminded people about another game in 1963. This was a regional semifinal against Mississippi State. Now, this was a game, remember, this is 1963. This was a game that was in grave danger of not even being played because Mississippi at that time had an informal law, was never formalized, wasn't passed by the legislature, but there was a lot of kind of cultural sentiment. So it became kind of an informal law that barred Mississippi schools like Ole Miss and Mississippi State from playing against racially integrated teams. In fact, that's why no team from Mississippi had been in the NCAA tournament in years, because a lot of teams now had broken the color barrier and they were playing integrated teams, and so Mississippi wouldn't send any of their teams to play them in the NCAA. So this is 1963, and Mississippi State is scheduled to play a game against Loyola Chicago, which started 4 black guys. I mean, talk about dating. This is from 1963. The story that I'll read you in a minute uses the word Negroes. This is how far back the story goes. They started 4 blacks in their starting lineup. So I'm going to read a little bit, and this is known, by the way, as the Game of Change because it was so significant in sort of seismically altering the racial landscape in college athletics. In 1966, the Texas Western Miners, I don't know if you remember that, there's a movie called Glory Road that tells the true story about that, stars Josh Lucas. All-black team, the Texas Western, they're UTEP today, University of Texas El Paso. Back then they were Texas Western, and they had an all-white team, or all-black team, starting lineup. They went up against Kentucky for the national championship, and Kentucky was starting an all-white team. So this was kind of a major deal. Adolph Rupp was the coach of Kentucky, and he had to work hard to kind of get over some of his instinctive reactions to this matchup. But Texas Western surprised everybody. They won the national championship. Now, here's the story as it read by the Associated Press back in 1963. Here's how, well, there's actually 2 stories. I'll read parts from some. It was just like any other basketball game, rugged under the backboards, decided on superior height and shooting. Mississippi State's controversial NCAA meeting with Chicago Loyola, almost prevented by a Mississippi court injunction, came off in routine fashion Friday night. Third-ranked Loyola, remember this is 1963, they were 26-2. They played 4 Negroes, that's the way Associated Press puts it, all the way. Easily defeated the 6th-ranked Southeastern Conference champion 61-51 in the opening round of the Mid-East Regionals. This is what the captain for Mississippi State said. His name was Dan Gold, Joe Dan Gold. They, speaking of Loyola Chicago, they were perfect gentlemen. Like any other team we played, they beat us on the offensive boards. They just had too many big men for us, and they won it by taking all those rebounds. Now, the game began with handshakes. So here are these white players from Mississippi State, and I give them credit for this. These white players from Mississippi State, they had no problem shaking hands with their black opponents despite this state law against what they were doing. And they congratulated Loyola at the end of the game. They won by 10, decisive victory. They patted them on the back to congratulate them. So it was a sweet moment of racial harmony where the white team from a state that celebrated segregation lost the game decisively, and yet they shook hands with their opponents. They congratulated them after the game. It was very peaceful. The game went off without any sort of a hitch. Coach Babe McCarthy was the Mississippi State coach at the time. He said, let's talk about the way they played basketball, not their color. There's a little cloak and dagger background to this I'm going to get to here in just a moment. He said, Loyola's one of the greatest teams in the country, said Coach McCarthy. They beat us, although we played a pretty good game. We'd have to be near perfect to beat Loyola. So this was the first appearance that Mississippi State had made in the NCAA. They turned down earlier NCAA invitations because of the unwritten law that prevented state-supported schools from competing in events in which they might even possibly meet integrated teams. Now, here's the backstory that is really, really interesting. This is from an AP story, Dateline East Lansing, Michigan, where the game was played. The controversy-plagued Mississippi State basketball team arrived here belatedly Thursday after an intriguing getaway drama at Starkville, Mississippi, and learned a court order preventing its play in the NCAA Mid-East Tourney Friday night had been suspended. So an injunction was issued, but then it was overturned. It was suspended. Supreme Court Judge Robert Gillespie suspended the order at Jackson, Mississippi, shortly after the Mississippi State team landed and headed for a practice session. Mississippi State had averted the order, banning its play in the tournament by flying out of Starkville Thursday morning before the injunction could be delivered. So the Mississippi State team said, look, they're probably going to pull that shenanigan. They're probably going to try to get some court order, some kind of injunction preventing us from playing this integrated team. So we're going to beat them to the point they just flew out of town. They just split. They left town Thursday morning from Starkville and headed up to East Lansing, Michigan. Now, their coach was not with the team when it left Starkville. The reason is that he'd already cut out for Nashville because he knew that the injunction, if it was going to be delivered, was going to be delivered to him as the head coach. So he got completely out of Dodge. He's up in Nashville, which is 5 hours away from Starkville by car. And the charter plane that the rest of the team was flying on picked him up in Nashville, and they went the rest of the way. Now, what's interesting is that the Mississippi State team, in order to beat this possible injunction, they said, well, you know, the possibility is if we go to the airport, the cops are going to be there. So let's do this. Let's send our second team to the airport. And then if the cops are there and they arrest or detain the second team, our first team guys, they will jump in a van and they will head out to Nashville and hook up with Coach McCarthy, and our first team at least will get up there to East Lansing to play Loyola Chicago. So anyway, that was a pretty cool deal. Mississippi. Here's the details on the escaping possible detection. Assistant coach Jerry Simmons kept the team's regulars in seclusion at a dormitory. As departure time neared, Simmons had 5 second stringers and a team trainer, Dutch Laxinger, go to the airport. The idea was that if the order were served to that group, Simmons would be notified by phone and he would hustle the regulars to a private plane for a flight to Nashville, where a regular flight would be made to East Lansing. McCarthy would accompany the team from that point. However, when they got to the airport, there was no deputy, no plane. The entire squad waited almost an hour for a chartered plane that had been delayed by weather. The 13-player squad, led by Captain Joe Dan Gold, went directly to Jennison Fieldhouse for a late afternoon workout, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Man, that would make a great movie,
yeah.
wouldn't it?
It would, wouldn't it? Yeah, yeah. You got, you got the whole 9 yards here. You got suspense, you got athletics.
Yep.
Yeah, and Joe Dan Gold, by the way, the best player at Loyola Chicago, I think his name was Joe Harkness. He was an All-American player. And Joe Dan Gold and Joe Harkness became good friends as a result of this whole deal.
I grew up in Mississippi and through segregation, and it just goes to show you how far the people of this state have come since 1963 to today. And I went through going to the first white group of students to go to an all-black high school. It was actually into a 10th grade year. But it was amazing time of learning each other's culture, and there was very little trouble of any kind, and everybody just learned to love each other and just became friends.
Yeah. Well, I've got a very good friend of mine that goes to the same church I do, same small group that I go to. And he was at Ole Miss in 1962 when it took the National Guard to get James Meredith to be able to register there. He actually knew, I think it was James Meredith was the guy.
Yeah, it was.
He got to know James Meredith a little bit. Nice guy. They got along great and all that kind of stuff. So, it's interesting that you've had people in Mississippi walk through an entire generation of social change when it comes to race issues. And the Mississippi State basketball team, they were pioneers in that. Good for them. We'll be right back.
I just took on a new mission for the Lord. And part of my group, there's going to be some gentlemen that are going through divorce. I myself went through one in 2005. But to show you the power of American Family Radio, I decided to listen to the Thursday morning broadcast, and Dr. Jeremiah is teaching on repairing marriage, and it's okay to be single. So the Lord gave me the tools I may need for the discussion topic tonight.
Hello, this is David Jeremiah, and I'm so thankful that my program, Turning Point, is aired on American Family Radio, because we are both committed to the same thing, being a voice of sanity, hope, and faith in a world desperately in need of all three.
God is using American Family Radio to make a difference in our nation. Please partner with us during our 3-day share-a-thon beginning Tuesday, April 17th.
Here on American Family Radio, this is David Wolin with Haven Ministries, inviting you to anchor your day in God's Word. What's the difference between the religions of the world and biblical Christianity? Well, religion points at you and says, do this. Biblical Christianity points to Jesus and says, done. In other words, righteousness isn't something you achieve for yourself. It's a status conferred by God on you through faith in Christ. But does that mean that a Christian just sits back and does nothing? Of course not. We're called to devote our very lives to serving Christ and His kingdom. Consider the way the Apostle Paul described his own ministry. He said, "For this I toil, struggling with all His energy that He powerfully works within me." Get more daily encouragement from Anchor Devotional. Just visit getanchor.com.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. Video segments of today's program will be posted at afr.net and on the Focal Point Facebook page. You'll also find the best collection of Brian's resources on our Facebook page. If you're on Twitter, be among the very first every morning to find out what the day's show will be about. Just follow Brian at Brian J. Fisher.
Brian J. Fisher.
Howdy and welcome back to Focal Point, American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Great to have you in the conversation. Got a few single items in different categories. I want to give you the information before we get back into. I want to talk some about the latest developments in the Mueller investigation and all that business. There's still an opportunity, by the way, to register for Truth for a New Generation Save a Nation Conference, which is going to be this weekend in North Carolina. Todd Starnes is going to speak there. Lauren Green is going to speak there. Josh McDowell, J. Warner Wallace, our own Abraham Hamilton III is going to be speaking there. Still not too late to register for that. The Truth for a New Generation Conference going to be this weekend, Friday night and Saturday. You can download the TNG app, or you can go to the website, Truth for a New Generation, and get the information you need to know how to register for that conference. You know, there was an interesting story that happened. Well, no, let's do this one first. I got to do this first. We got to do this Joe Biden, Donald Trump showdown. Yeah. Now here is we got a little soundbite of Joe Biden throwing down on Donald Trump. So let's listen, and we've got the complete soundbite here. There's a little element of Joe Biden's sound here that the news media they clipped it. Yeah, they clipped it, but we have preserved it. Let's listen.
They asked me, would I like to debate this gentleman? And I said, no. I said, if we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him.
Put him up. Put him up. I fight you with one paw tied behind my back.
Okay. Now, I'm sure that you would like to hear that again, because this is the raw, unedited version of Joe Biden challenging Donald Trump to an alley fight. Well, let's save it. We'll come back to it, and you can hear it again. Now, here's what Donald Trump said in response. Crazy Joe Biden is trying to act like a tough guy. Actually, he is weak. This is like junior high school.
I know.
Meet me out behind the gym. Oh, man. Crazy Joe Biden is trying to act like a tough guy. Actually, he is weak, both mentally and physically, and yet he threatens me for the second time with physical assault. He doesn't know me. He would go down fast and hard, crying all the way. Don't threaten people, Joe, especially the Tangerine Tornado. So he didn't add that. Just don't threaten people, Joe. You know, it's interesting. I saw a guy in the Washington Post actually contacted some martial arts masters to get their prediction about who would win this showdown, and they're all Democrats, so predictably they all picked Joe Biden. Man. But what I think we need, let's play Joe Biden one more time. Again, the raw, unedited version of Joe Biden throwing down on Donald Trump.
They asked me, would I like to debate this gentleman? And I said, no. I said, if we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him.
Put him up. Put him up. I fight you with one paw tied behind my back.
Okay. That put him up thing. Who said that? Who was that?
That was the lion off of
Wizard of Oz.
Wizard of Oz?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we know where he got it. He got it from Joe Biden. That's where the lion and Wizard of Oz got that line.
Yeah, obviously, Joe Biden has never seen the footage of him, Donald Trump fighting at the WWF tournament. He really threw that guy down.
Trump actually threw a guy down, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, that was in his earlier days. He's a little older now. Now I think the fight would be more like Joe Biden claps on and Trump claps off. You know, that would be the battle. Yeah. Clap on, clap off.
Put him up. Here's what I think we need.
Let's get ready to stumble.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. Yeah. I wish I'd heard about that first. We could have done something with that. Yeah. But I think here's what we need. I think Jeff's on the right angle here. We need a pay-per-view extravaganza featuring the Tangerine Tornado against the Connecticut Mauler, Crazy Joe Biden.
The Connecticut Mauler.
The Connecticut Mauler. I mean, we could make bank running that deal.
We need to use his whole name, Crazy Uncle Joe.
Crazy Uncle Joe Biden. All right, well, enough of that little foolishness. We had this story. Remember the students walking out for 17 minutes? Remember that deal? Yeah. I got to check the stories that we haven't run yet. I better get to some of that. Yeah, I got too many sound bites here we got to get to before we're out of time. I'm going to skip clip 1 because I want to have a little bit of time to develop a response to that. It's somebody slamming evangelical Christians. I mean, it's just a complete all-out assault right now. Well, let's jump to clip number 2. This is Chris Wray, the current FBI director, and he's being asked by Pete Williams about how nonpartisan the committee was that recommended that Andrew McCabe be fired. Remember, I've made the point over and over and over again, Donald Trump did not fire Andrew McCabe. The FBI, his own fellow agents, fired him after an investigation. Here's what Christopher Wray says about that.
I am committed to doing things objectively and independently and by the book. And I think that has to extend not just to our investigations, our intelligence analysis, but it also has to extend to personnel decisions and disciplinary decisions.
Some people have commented, though, on the fact that it happened, 26 hours before he was to retire.
Well, again, I want to be careful about what I can say about the process, but I will tell you that my commitment to making sure that our process is followed, that it relies on objective input, and that most importantly, it is not based on political or partisan influence is something I am utterly unyielding on.
Okay, so the process was followed. The recommendation was made as it's supposed to be made, and the person to whom the recommendation was made, Attorney General Jeff Sessions, took action. Now, we got a little bit of a conflict on the Mueller investigation between Jeffrey Toobin, who's a Harvard Law grad, was taught at Harvard Law by Alan Dershowitz. and they are on different sides of the Robert Mueller investigation. Jeffrey Toobin is a fierce anti-Trumpster, and Alan Dershowitz is not a big-time Trump guy. He voted for Hillary Clinton, but he's committed to the law, and he's doing the best job he knows how to do to be objective about looking at the law and the implications of the law for this conflict between Trump and Bob Mueller. Here's their exchange. First, we'll hear from Jeffrey Toobin, and then from Alan Dershowitz. Let's listen.
How has this come about that in every situation over the past year you have been carrying water for Donald Trump? This is not who you used to be, and you are doing this over and over again in situations that are just obviously ripe with conflict of interest, and it's just like, what's happened to you?
What conflict of interest? I attack President Trump.
Not you. I'm talking about not your conflict of interest, these conflicts of interest.
I attack President Trump for his banning of Muslims. I attack President Trump for leaking material about to Russia. I've attacked President Trump for many, many things. I'm not carrying his water. I'm saying exactly the same thing I said for 50 years. And Jeffrey, you ought to know that. You were my student. I have never deviated from this. I have never deviated from this point.
But you know,
now, the fact that it applies to Trump now, rather than applying to Bill Clinton, is why people like you have turned against me. Don't you understand that principle requires bipartisanship and nonpartisanship? And that's who I am and have always been.
So in other words, he's saying, look, to Jeffrey Toobin, look, if you were nonpartisan in this, if you were just following principle, following truth, following justice, following the law, then you would be agreeing with me. And remember, Dershowitz has been one of the leading voices to say, look, this investigation never should have started because the law requires that a special counsel be chartered with investigating a specific crime. No crime has ever been labeled, identified. So that's why Mueller is on this just complete, I don't know what you would call it. It's like a treasure hunt out there with no guidelines, unlimited funds, 17 partisan Democrats running the investigation. Now here is clip number 4. This is Alan Dershowitz again talking about why he is defending Trump in this situation.
I have no interest in whether Donald Trump is exonerated or not. If the evidence is against him, I will be the first person to call him out on it. I am asking for non-criminalization of political differences, narrow construction of the criminal law, civil liberties to apply equally to Democrats and Republicans. What you accuse me of is not being partisan. You want me to have a different standard against Donald Trump than I did in relation to the Clintons and with everybody else. I said the same thing about Bob Menendez. I said the same thing about everybody who has been prosecuted. I'm saying the same thing about Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel. I think there's criminalization of political differences there. I have been utterly and completely consistent and nonpartisan, and Jeffrey, you haven't.
All right, Alan Dershowitz, kind of coming off the floor on that one. Now let's play clip 5. This is Rand Paul. He's talking. Here's his view of the investigation.
It's sort of this witch hunt now that's become very, very partisan. And now we're seeing all these people from the intelligence community, Brennan, Clapper, all of them piling on and exposing themselves to be left-wing Democrats who hate the president. So, yes, I think we have to be very careful about how much power we give to those in the intelligence community.
So Rand Paul is saying, look, these guys have gotten partisan. He's looking at the people in the intelligence community. And that's one of the things. You look at what Brennan and Clapper have said, just how vicious they've been in going after Trump. I mean, it's completely unprofessional. It's beneath their stature as leaders or former leaders in the intelligence community, but it's an indication of just how compromised the deep state is. There is a deep state. Rand Paul said it this morning. There is a deep state, and look how compromised it is. And when you have guys like Brennan and Clapper that just go completely unhinged in their attacks on Donald Trump. And then, of course, you have people in the swamp. You have swamp creatures, leaders of the swamp. They've got a slightly different view of Robert Mueller. Clip 6.
I agree with the president's lawyers that Bob Mueller should be allowed to finish his job. I think it was an excellent appointment. I think he will lead, he will go wherever the facts lead him. And I think he will have great credibility with the American people when he reaches the conclusion of this investigation. So I have a lot of confidence in it.
All right, so that would put Mitch in a fairly small number. I think, I'm trying to remember who else that surprised me. Trey Gowdy has said very complimentary things about Robert Mueller. He has a lot of confidence in Trey Gowdy, thinks he's a straight shooter. I do not. In fact, we had that story about Mueller botching that investigation, the anthrax investigation, putting the guy that was innocent in jail for a while. The government had to bail out that situation to the tune of $5.8 million or something like that. And it's not the only time. Mueller did the same thing in the 90s. He was in the FBI. Another time he put an innocent guy behind bars. So Mueller is not the ace cop. In fact, it's kind of a surprising thing to me with those things in his background that he got to where he got. Focal Point, American Family Radio. Give us a call to join the conversation, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840.
As a 10-year-old boy, my dad and our whole family started back to church.
Bert Harper on the Word of God.
And the church I went to, the pastor really preached the Word of God with conviction. I knew that it was a book that we could depend upon and live our lives by. And I hope I bring that same passion to exploring the Word.
Exploring the Word with Bert Harper and Alex McFarland. Weekday afternoons at 3 Central on American Family Radio.
You wish you could stop thinking about it, but you can't. It never quite leaves your thoughts. Even in the joyful moments, it's there. The sadness, shame, and sorrow. You know you can't go on like this, so don't. Phone the International Helpline for Abortion Recovery at 866-482-LIFE. Your call is confidential, and you'll be talking with someone who's already been where you are and found the way out. 866-482-LIFE.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. Well, our June Spiritual Heritage Tour is full, and our September trip is filling up fast. So if you want to go with us to Washington, D.C. and Mount Vernon for our Spiritual Heritage Tour, you need to sign up soon. We're going to be seeing lots and lots of sites, including the Capitol, the Library of Congress, the Supreme Court, the Jefferson and Lincoln Memorials, the Korean and Vietnam Memorials, the Arlington National Cemetery, and much, much more. For all the information on this tour, September the 19th through the 22nd, please go to the website spiritualheritagetours.com. That's spiritualheritagetours.com for all the information. And we also go to Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown. That's a separate trip, but we put them back to back in case you want to do both of those tours. Again, that's in September. For more information, go to the website spiritualheritagetours.com.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. Focal Point, Brian Fisher.
Welcome back to Focal Point, American Family Radio. Last segment of the program. We would love to take your phone calls. So give us a call at 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. And Jeff did get the link to the roll call vote on the omnibus bill this morning. He did get that roll call vote up on the Facebook page, so you can go there and you can find that link. And you also got a link to the petition.
I put it on the thread. I'll go ahead and put it on the page so they can find it easily.
Okay, so the link to the roll call vote is going to be on the Focal Point Facebook page as well as on the thread. That was the live discussion taking place on the Facebook page. Let's grab a quick call or a quick soundbite clip number 7 while you're calling in, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Donald Trump got a lot of criticism for calling Vladimir Putin and congratulating him on his electoral victory. And that was a sham election. He won 75% of the vote. Wasn't any mystery who was going to win that. And so people were just trashing him for calling Vladimir Putin to congratulate him on his victory. And we saw that Barack Obama did exactly the same thing. Apparently they'd forgotten all about that he called Vladimir Putin on the same occasion when he won re-election in 2012 and called him to congratulate him. Here's Bill Bennett on Fox's special report talking about another historical individual and what he did.
Could I speak to the congratulations to Putin? Everybody has pointed out that Obama did this, and Obama also congratulated the president of Iran on his. But a little history here. You want to talk about bad Russians? Churchill, I've checked my books, Churchill congratulated Stalin on his birthday. God knows, one of the worst days in the history of the world, the birthday of Joseph Stalin. Churchill did that, the great statesman. I was watching one of the other cable networks, and they were highly insulted because they said the president has insulted us and Meryl Streep and Chuck Todd, but he won't insult Putin. Maybe the president thinks Putin might be useful for international negotiations in a way Chuck Todd and Meryl Streep may not be.
That would be nicer to Putin because he has nuclear weapons at his disposal. Last I checked, Chuck Todd and Meryl Streep do not. One last clip, and then we'll go to the phones. This is Ann Coulter talking about, hey, maybe things are sort of backfiring on the left, and this relentless press toward political correctness, this relentless punishment of college students, including males who won't bend the knee to political correctness. Here's how the exchange went.
I don't care what your opinion is on free speech or guns or anything else, but please stop pretending you're a rebel. Please stop pretending you're fighting the man when you are just lockstep with corporate America. These new radicals we have, the resistance, they'll check with corporate America, Apple and Twitter, Facebook, and their professors to ask if they can wear a Question Authority T-shirt. Would that be okay?
Has there ever been a more obedient little cadre of robots than college students? Does anybody think, is anyone brave? Is anybody giving the finger to the man and speaking the truth? Where are those people? What happened?
Well, the good news is I'm following a lot of them on Twitter. I get the impression that we are creating, and the left is creating, without realizing it, this really hilarious and ferocious generation of right-wingers. These college students, they're listening to white privilege all day, every moment of every day. White heterosexual men are emerging from college barking at the moon, right-wingers. And they're a lot of fun to follow on Twitter.
So what she's saying is, look, eventually, people will put up with a lot. And conservatives, we are taught by the Judeo-Christian tradition to be patient people. We're taught to be kind people. We're taught to be people who defer, who are slow to anger. We're taught to be people who have a long fuse. So we put up with a lot. But what Ann Coulter is saying is, look, these college guys, they have been putting up with a lot year after year, and they finally have just gotten about tired of putting up with stuff. They're going to start responding. They're going to start declaring the truth in response. They're no longer going to take it anymore without saying something. They're not going to get violent or anything like that, but they're going to just stop taking this politically correct nonsense without saying something in return. So the whole thing may be backfiring on the left. All right, well, let's go to the phones. Let's grab a call from Jason in Hickory, North Carolina. Jason, welcome. What's on your mind?
Hi, Brian. I just kind of wanted to touch base and see if you could find the logic in this. They are allowing kids to make decisions. There's been issues of kids being taken away from their parents and everything, making these sex change decisions and things like that. Why is it such an issue for them to make a decision like that when it's not an issue for them, when it is actually such a big issue for them to issue gun control for somebody 18 to 21? What's the difference there? Can anybody explain that to me? That's just simple logic.
Yeah. Well, you are right about that. And, you think about this whole idea of just trying to repress freedom of speech for college students. It's absurd. Because that's what college is supposed to be about. College is supposed to be a free-for-all of ideas. It's supposed to be a marketplace of ideas where people advance ideas. Those ideas are responded to. There's vigorous discussion. There's vigorous debate. Everybody benefits from that. And people's worldview begins to be shaped and adjusted and tempered by what by these debates they observe and that they participate in. So just absolutely ridiculous to think that they just simply cannot handle hearing ideas they do not agree with. All right, good call, Jason, thank you for that. Let's go to Artis in Michigan. Artis, welcome. What's on your mind?
Hi, thanks a lot for taking my call. I'm so frustrated about this spending bill. I think it should be called the ominous spending bill instead of the omnibus spending bill. And I listened to Rush earlier today, and he's pretty confident that Trump won't veto it. So I think we need to bombard President Trump with phone calls, emails, whatever we can to have him veto this. This is an outrage.
Well, I think you're right, and I think, there is a White House comment line. You can look it up. It's pretty easy to find, and you can leave a recorded message for the president at that comment line, and I think that'd be a good idea. Again, we haven't gotten final confirmation that this bill has been passed by the Senate. Apparently, I had some misinformation earlier. I anticipate it will be passed by the Senate because everybody's agreed on this thing. So the last place that we can go to get this bill stopped would be for the president to veto it. And we've already talked about some of the ways he could actually improve this bill by vetoing it. If he vetoed it and he explained exactly what about the bill, line by line, the parts of the bill that he found objectionable and what it would take for him to be able to sign this thing. So that's not a bad idea, Artist. Maybe our calls ought to be directed to the White House comment line, see if we can make one last-ditch appeal to Donald Trump to veto this thing. All right, Artist, very good call. Thank you. Let's go to Robert in Illinois. Robert, welcome. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Brian, I just wanted to ask about this, this bill that they're trying to push through, all the senators and representatives that are supposedly Republicans. I guess there's a lot more rhinos than we thought. And so when this bill goes across Trump's desk, if he doesn't veto it, isn't it going to pretty much mean that he's being transformed into one of the swamp creatures himself?
Well, you know what? Yeah, and we certainly hope he doesn't sign it. He's given indications that he's going to do it. Trump has actually said it directly that he is going to sign this thing. And, again, I think Donald Trump is kind of competing with himself on this deal. I think there are two competing energies or dynamics in Donald Trump. One is the part of him that I think has genuinely conservative instincts. The other part of him is the deal maker. And I think maybe that part of Donald Trump is what's won the internal debate, because he prides himself on being able to make deals, getting people together in the same room that have differences of agreement, finding some ground on which they agree, some common ground, and inking a deal, getting them to agree with something, getting things moving forward. So for him, this is like signing a contract on a business deal. And he knows that when you are working contracts and business deals, everybody's got to be prepared to give some ground. You go into a negotiation, you don't start out with the figure you can live with. You start with a figure that's way higher, so you've got some room to maneuver and to negotiate and to dicker. And I think that's probably the part of Donald Trump that won. I think he probably loves the fact that this thing is now a deal. It's a huge deal. It's a $1.3 trillion deal, probably the biggest deal that he's ever been a part of in his entire business life or entire life, public life. So I'm guessing Donald Trump probably pretty happy with this thing. He's got plenty of people in D.C., and I think we can add to that number who are, trying to set him straight about this bill and to make him aware of the problems with it. But anyway, if he sticks with what he said he's going to do, he will wind up signing this bill. All right, let's go to Roger in Augusta, Texas. Roger, what's on your mind? Talk to me.
This was Roger in Odessa.
Odessa. Sorry about that. Go ahead, Roger. My bad. What's on your mind?
That's okay. Alan Dershowitz is a liberal. I'm a conservative, so automatically we are opposed to each other on a lot of matters. However, I find myself having to admire the man a little bit for his honesty and his guts to stand up even against extreme liberals that are attacking him, because we know that they're going to always attack. Facts are not important to them. It's their philosophy, and they will always attack even their own kind. And that's why we don't have more people like Alan Dershowitz speaking up, who may be secretly believing that the investigation that Mueller is going through should never have taken place.
Well, and I think you're right about that. And I think one of the, and this is where we just need more Christian men, college students, friends, who just stand up and say, look, I'm not going to be pushed around anymore. I don't care who disagrees with me. I don't care who mocks me. I don't care who ridicules me. I'm tired and I'm through just keeping my silence. I'm going to start making my opinions heard, be a part of the conversation no matter what comes against me. That's it for today. We'll see you back here tomorrow. See you then.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
American Family Association, a ministry with a mission to inform, equip, and activate people like you to strengthen the moral foundations of American culture and to give aid to the church here and abroad in her task of fulfilling the Great Commission. We couldn't do it without your day-to-day support. American Family